I wanted to talk with you about the expectations you should have when dating Western women and Eastern women. And the purpose of this video is not to determine who is better, but rather to determine who is more suitable for you, because that's what it's all about. So let's get started talking about Western women. Now, things have changed over the past, decades, over the past century, if you will. Since we had this massive feminism movement, we had it in the United States, we had it in Europe, it was all about giving women equal rights. At this moment in time, I think it's fair to say that we have achieved exactly that. Women have equal rights, and in some instances even more rights than men. For instance, when it comes to custody rights, when it comes to certain, rights that women get in the event that they should divorce, their husband. There's just a magnitude of benefits that women enjoy these days, and you could even argue that women have more rights than men, which would be a very fair assumption to make. When dating Western women these days, I think something you really have to understand is that a good chunk of these women, they don't want to have children anymore. Because they are independent, because they have their own career, because they have enough money to supply for themselves, and of course they also have the security from the government in case something should go wrong. They're going to receive unemployment payment, they're going to receive social benefits, food stamps. They get so many benefits, right, that they don't really need a man anymore to take care of them. Or at least that's what a lot of women think. Well, it is not true for all women. You couldn't really say that all of them are feminists, but I would say a good chunk of them are feminists, and that usually hurts the man who wants to be in a, conservative, traditional relationship where the man puts the meat on the table, the woman takes care of the household and the kids. And we have so many women out there just pop out of nowhere who claim that women were a lot happier in the good old days when women had to take care of the basic stuff, the stuff a woman is supposed to take care of, or that a woman likes to take care of. This really happened now that so many women came out and they were like, well, I have my own career, I have my own income, but I'm not as happy as I could be. And they put the blame on feminism, even though they wanted it. Their ancestors wanted it, and now all of a sudden it's no longer okay. Just so you know what you're dealing with when it comes to equal rights. In the United States, 85% of divorces are initiated by women. And I think that says a lot. I really think so. And that's just one point, right? The independent stuff is one point. Women don't want to have kids anymore because, the whole point of having kids is, of course, to have a family, is, of course, to have offspring, to have successors. That's, of course, the whole purpose of a family. But what's also true is that the purpose of having a family is to have security. Because from what we can see in Asian countries, Middle Eastern countries, Latin countries, is that people have more kids. Why? They want economic security. They think the more kids they put on this planet, the more security they will achieve. That's not true. It is true that 10 kids, whenever they start to work, are probably going to have a higher output than just one kid, right? That's probably true, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be financially independent because you have 10 kids. That's not what it means. And now we're even seeing that this is changing in certain countries, like Egypt, in certain Middle Eastern countries, the birth rate's going down too. But in Western culture, women don't want to have kids anymore. If they have one kid or two children, they're going to be more than fine. And there's a lot of women that don't want to have kids at all. And that doesn't really suit well with some men, but also some men, Western men, we're also the same. Not all of us, but some of us, we don't want to have kids anymore because we have enough economic solvency to not worry about, raising children and hoping that they're going to take care of us when we're old, like it was hundreds of years ago. And what about cooking? Western women, they don't like to cook anymore. They just like to buy frozen foods, which they're gonna, slam into the microwave and give it a good, quick 2 to 3 minutes to have some food ready. But women don't want to cook anymore. Why is that? Well, because first of all, they're busy with their own careers and people only care about themselves. And that's true for both genders, just to be fair, but it also has to do with the fact that convenience is available like it never was, and convenience is affordable. People can just go to the supermarket, buy frozen food, which of course in no way is comparable to freshly prepared food. If you want to put in the work to do that, it's just so much better. You appreciate food a lot more because you have the physical output right in front of you. And women don't want to do that anymore. Of course, not 100% of women, but a good chunk. If you ask them, hey, do you want to bake a cake? Or do you want to make lasagna? Or do you want to make beef roulade? They're going to say no because it's too much work, too much process. They just want to sit on the sofa, eat as much as they want. It's quantity over quality, and that's a problem. But doesn't mean you can't find a good conservative Western woman who still enjoys cooking. They do exist. Now, what are some of the pros when dating a Western woman? Obviously, the pro is communication, because most likely, you're going to be able to communicate better with someone who speaks your language to a T. You understand each other very well. Maybe you were born in the same city, you come, from the same town, whatever. I mean, maybe you even went elementary school together. Who knows, right? Like, you have just more history, right? You have more communalities. And communication is a big key for a relationship to work. If you don't have communication, you don't really have anything. And that's unfortunately a problem with women from developing countries, where communication is not as present as it is if you were in a relationship with a Western woman. Another big pro is obviously cultural communalities. The same religion, the same daily habits, the same things you appreciate, communalities, the same things you like to do. And I think that's important too, to keep a relationship together. And I think people just are more likely to find that in the Western Hemisphere. If, of course, they are from the Western Hemisphere, they're more likely to find that than if they would go to a developing country. I'm not saying it's not possible in a developing country, it certainly is, but generally dating a woman from your own culture is just a lot more inherent. It's a lot more sensible in certain ways. Not in all ways, but in some ways it is. And of course, earning ability is another reason why Western men prefer Western women. Life in the West is more expensive. You can't afford a lot of things. Like, if you live together and both people are earning an income, you're much more likely to afford a nice place than if you were to do it all on your own. I'm not saying that you can't do it all on your own. You certainly can, especially if you are, working in a high position. If you're like a manager, if you're like, a CEO, if you run your own company, then of course you're able to do it. But for an average worker who has a regular 9-to-5 job, it's probably going to be difficult to afford a quality life, especially in the United States. In European countries, where the government, just takes care a lot better of people, I want to say, in terms of healthcare, in terms of, like pension, there's just more security there for the long term, I guess. Whereas in the United States, that is just not the case. All right, let's talk about women from developing countries. What makes them better? What makes them stand out, Why would a Western man want to get into a relationship with a woman from a developing country, from an Eastern country? And there's many reasons for that. One of the biggest reasons is obviously that it is a more conservative and more traditional relationship, in a sense that a relationship that we had hundreds of years ago, which a lot of men aspire to have. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a man wanting a traditional relationship where the man is the provider, the woman is taking care of the household, taking care of the children, raising the children. Nothing wrong with that. If somebody tells you there's something wrong with that, there's nothing wrong with that. There's 1,000 ways to live life, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's only something wrong with it if you're being taken advantage of a lot and you're being mentally manipulated, psychologically manipulated, then it's a problem, then it's not okay. But if you're in a healthy relationship with a conservative woman who wants to play the conservative woman that you want her to be, and you want to play the traditional role of the man, then that's great. Then that's what you want to do. If that makes you happy, if that's your goal, go out there and do it. So Western men like to be in a relationship with Eastern women because they're more passive submissive in many cases. Not in all cases, but in many cases they are. Because they're looking for a provider, they're looking for the man who can be the man. And that's totally fine if the woman wants that and she can find it in a Western man, and that's just great, Both parties win, it's a fair deal, and they should do it if that's what they want. Women from developing countries can be harder working than women from developed countries, because women from developing countries, they come from a poor background, they're going to appreciate things a lot more. They understand that, it takes work to get there. They're probably used to working a lot. I mean, if you just take a look at the Vietnamese culture, the Thai culture, Chinese culture, I mean, they are hard-working people. They're hard-working people because that's the only way you can get out of poverty in their country. It's not working a regular job. It's usually running your own business. Maybe it's doing multiple jobs. It's just hustling. It's hustling day in and day out, day and night, just doing it repeatedly. That's what they want to do. And so you're more likely to find a woman who's going to appreciate the little things. because she never had the little things. And she's going to be more appreciative if you can give it to her, and you've worked hard on it. It's just a lot more fulfilling to have that product in front of you if you put all your heart, your sweat, your love into it. It's just so much better in my personal experience. They are willing to listen and learn. And that's crucial because oftentimes women from Western countries are not as receptive to advice. They think they know it all because, they're established themselves. So oftentimes they even look down on their boyfriend, on their husband. And that's not good. Now, women from developing countries, they have this eagerness to learn, and that's fantastic. Show me a person with a goal, and I'm going to show you a person who's going to write history. Show me a person without a goal, and I'm going to show you an average person. And that's exactly what's going to happen if you're in a relationship with a woman from a developing country, from an Eastern country. They have goals, they have aspirations, they want to do things, and, with anything that you give them, they're going to put in their heart, they're hardworking, they're going to appreciate it. They know that that's required to get to the next level. And it was exactly like this in the West hundreds of years ago, early past century, 19th century, 18th century, 17th century. It was like that in the West. But now people, everything that they have is being handed to them on a silver platter. And of course, that makes people lazy, entitled, ignorant, arrogant, you name it. It's just not a healthy recipe in my personal opinion. Women from developing countries, Eastern countries, they want children, they want a family because, first of all, like we already talked about, children mean security. If you can give them children, if you can give them what they want, you give them a future. And you also give them security because, if they know, okay, he wants to have kids with me, he's probably not going to run away. If they know he doesn't want to have kids with me, okay, I'm feeling scared right now because why does he not want to have kids with me? Is he looking at another woman? Is he trying, to build multiple relationships? Is he just trying to spend a little bit of time here before he leaves? These are questions that pop up in Eastern women's head. And that's perfectly fine. But if you're together with an Eastern woman, then you're probably into something good if you want to have a family because they're very family oriented, because for them, the family is the strongest bond ever. It is the strongest bond ever. For a woman from a developing country, her family is everything. Her family means security. It means trust. It means future because, as we know, governments in developing countries are not very likely to take care of their own citizens because they don't value their own citizens enough. That's usually the problem in developing countries. So family is important because, if you're a woman, then what are you going to do? Who's going to take care of you? Well, it can only be your family if the government's not going to do it. So they don't want to lose the asset that they have. And that's really important. Now, on the negative, there's negatives too, right? When dating a woman from a developing country, you're going to run into some negatives. And we're talking about, you're not going to be with someone who has assets, somebody who has a house, somebody who has money, because they typically come from poorer backgrounds. Well, that is not necessarily a bad thing. You're probably not going to find a woman that has equal income, has equal assets. If that's what you're looking for, maybe a woman from a developing country is not for you. If you're looking for equality, if you're looking for that, you're probably looking in the wrong place. You can find it, but it's very rare. And women from developing countries who have secured their finances, they usually don't date Western men, or not as likely as women who haven't. That's something you need to consider. Obviously, language barrier kills a lot of relationships. If you meet a woman from a developing country and her English proficiency is super low, chances are you're gonna give up before you get to the promised land. There are men that are very patient, that can wait, listen, because you gotta wait until her English improved for you to have a good conversation with her, for her to really understand you. Because if her English is not that good, how can you have a meaningful conversation? How can you avoid conversational problems? The answer is you can't. You're gonna have to find a way, to solve things because that you are in a relationship that is based on poor communication. And if you're in a relationship that's based on poor communication, you're going to run into a lot of problems, misunderstandings, unnecessary arguments, somebody shutting down because they don't get what you are trying to tell them. And the same also goes for her. She has limited ability to express herself, and so she's less likely to be understood by you. Many problems. The biggest problem is, of course, cultural differences. Her expectations of you. Can you ever make up for that? The answer is no. To change a person's culture is practically impossible. It may only happen in a very limited number of cases. For instance, when you move her to a Western country, she probably will eventually adjust to the new culture. Not 100%, maybe not even 50%, but she will adjust a little bit. There are cases of women that adjusted for a good part or even 100%, but it's not that likely to happen, especially not in a short period of time. Because at the end of the day, we are who we are. We spend years and decades becoming the person we are today, so it's kind of foolish to believe that a person will change just for you. What do you think about dating Western and Eastern women? Who is more suitable for you? Leave a comment below and let us know. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm uploading new videos on digital nomad locations, travel updates, and investment advice several times a week right now. I highly recommend that you grab a free copy of my latest ebook, The Nomad Elite Income Booster, your go-to guide for creating passive income streams using the internet. And if you got some more time left, check out these videos. Thank you for watching.